Looks like we've got some Major League Rugby, some college lacrosse, some Big Three basketball, some college football, NFL football, more college basketball, more basketball, the NFL Today, which is CBS's pregame show, NFL football, college lacrosse, bowling. And so this queue really has shown up all over the place. So let's take a listen to All Up in This, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, your weekly insight into the world of production, library, and sync music. Whether you are brand new or just curious about the industry, or maybe you have tons and tons of placements, I promise you, you're at the right place. And I just want to thank you for spending part of your day here with me. And as always, a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and neighbor subscribers of 52 Qs who really do keep all of this going. We would not be able to do any of this without their help. If you want to learn more about how you can support 52 Qs, join the community while also getting a ton of extra subscriber perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, and the opportunity to submit to real music libraries, and be sure to stick around because I'm going to be telling you all about that a little bit later in today's episode. Speaking of today's episode, it's kind of a return to form for the channel. If you dig back far enough into the channel, you will see videos where I unpack some of my cues, where I open up the Logic session and I talk about the harmonic structure, different cues form, talk about the melodic choices and the mix and all of that. These are cue breakdowns. Now, I currently do cue breakdowns every single week, and we have for the last 2.5, going on 3 years, every single week, a different cue breakdown over for the family and friends subscribers. But I want to bring a little bit more of that back here to the YouTube channel. And so today we are going to be unpacking a cue called All Up in This, which is one of my epic hip hop sports broadcasting cues, which has gotten a ton of love across, college basketball, I think college football, the NFL. It's even showed up in bowling. It's showed up in collegiate lacrosse. So this is a cue that kind of transcends sports, but I want to unpack All Up in This and show you how I put together epic hip hop cues that tend to get a lot of love. So you want to tune in for that. But first, how has my week been? It's been, as always, I listened through and it's been a busy week. It's been a busy week, but a return to form in that I am starting to write a little bit more, put the finishing touches on a trailer cue that we'll listen to a little bit later. And so that felt good. This is a trailer cue that we had been working on for the last 4 weeks during our live streams. And so it's good to have that finished. That is called Only Ever Onward, and we're going to be listening to that a little bit later. Also, PMC is coming up, and I've talked about that and some of my, kind of insecurities about flying and all of that. But after going to the PMA virtual networking event yesterday, I'm just really excited, because you jump into there and you have friends and colleagues and folks from the community, publishers I work with, fellow composers, and we're all like chatting each other, and it's just a really, really good time. And I'm filled with excitement. I'm so excited to go over to the PMC. I'll be leaving Monday morning. We are going to be having a 52 Qs meetup Monday night. If you are interested, if you're a member of the 52 Qs community, whether you're a paid subscriber or a community member, you are welcome to this. Check out the RSVP over at 52qs.com or in the 52 Qs community, and it is in the events in the Composer Cafe space, so you can check that out. Looking forward to a great PMC. But at the end of last week, there was a huge bustle of energy when I got a text message from one of my publishers, my publisher who publishes for CBS, and they said, CBS needs this. this queue, super last minute. They haven't really found what they're looking for. And so do you think you can turn this around? Now, this was Wednesday night, I believe. And so they needed it no later than 4 p.m. on Friday. Turns out they really, really wanted it by lunchtime on Friday. So we're talking about 36 hours. And so we put up what we call the bat signal in the briefing room being the place over for the family subscribers where we write cues and we answer briefs and we publish albums and all of that kind of stuff. And so my publisher said, "Hey, do you think we can kind of get the family on this?" And so we sent up the bat signal, gave them the reference that we were working from, gave them all of the details that we had from the network, and basically said, "We got 36 hours. There are no guarantees here, but this might get air on Sunday." And so a lot of folks, we had 7 submissions in total. I ended up doing a collaboration with one of our family members. Shout out to Jeff LaPlante. And we turned something around really, really quick. And it turned out great. Really, really happy about it. And we'll probably be doing a listen through of that queue next week. But come Sunday morning, then the pregame show comes on and we did not get the placement. And I had to remind myself, like I've been doing this. This is my 10th season now, writing music for the NFL and CBS. And I should know better, right? I should know better than to kind of get my hopes up. I need to embrace the right, submit, forget, right? That's the part I should have circled in red with arrows, forget, Dave, and then repeat. But I found myself getting swept up into the expectation of possibly getting a placement. Now last week I talked about how I should never take this for granted, getting placements, right? Oh, I'm on TV, no big whoop, right? No, I talked about that last week. But I think this is the flip side of this, No, I don't take getting placements. I don't take that for granted, but also it means that I still have some emotional investment in my cues. I still have some kind of skin in the game, some emotional skin in the game. And after I got over kind of being bummed out about it, I felt good about it because I took a shot, and it's a good thing that I'm still, I hope I get it. I feel like I'm the right choice. We had some fantastic submissions. It turns out they kind of went into an opposite direction, which was somewhat counter to some of the details from the brief, but that's their prerogative. Editors, supervisors, libraries get to do that because it's not our business. If we wanted that to change, then we should start our own network and run our own professional sports. Otherwise, somebody gets to make that call, and that is completely out of control. But what I did my best in were the things that I did have control over. I can control getting things in on time. I can control connecting with a collaborator. I can control making it the best I possibly can and doing my best work in the very limited time we had to put this together. And we did. So I am proud of that. And I'm also convinced that it's going to find air because no good cue goes unused, eventually. While that was a drag, and I was really bummed not to get the placement, and a lot of folks put a lot of hard work. We're talking, I was talking with one composer who lives in the UK. No, he lives in Spain, and was working well into the night. They're 5 or 6 hours ahead, and at 9 o'clock at night, we're chatting with each other and DMs and over in the community, and I was helping him out, listening to some things, and it just didn't work out. It's totally okay, but all of those cues are going to get batched and sent along and could possibly find homes. But I would say that if after all this time, all these submissions, all the placements, if you find yourself still stinging a little bit, then that's a good thing, because it's kind of like still being in love with your wife, or your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your significant other, right? The spark is still there. And that was encouraging. That was really, really encouraging for me. And like I said, I think we're going to be listening to that cue next week, and you can judge for yourself if you think that it deserved to make some air. But speaking of making air, for today's topic, like I said in the intro, bit of a return to form where I want to unpack one of my cues, and I'm looking to do this somewhat regularly, whether I'm going to be showing an epic hip hop cue like I'm going to be showing today, or like a dramedy cue or an ominous tension cue or whatever. And if you have a specific type of cue that you would like to see a breakdown of, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see. Chances are I've written something like it, and I'd be happy to unpack that for you. So this is a cue called All Up in This, and like I said, it has shown up all over the place. So going back to 2020, it showed up in college basketball. Here's a women's college basketball. Let's see, more college basketball. Oh, we got some college hockey. We've got some more women's college basketball. Looks like we've got some Major League Rugby, some college lacrosse, some Big Three basketball, some college football, NFL football, more college basketball, more basketball. The NFL Today, which is CBS's pregame show, NFL football, college lacrosse, bowling. And so this cue really has shown up all over the place. So let's take a listen to All Up in This, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. So that was All Up in This, very, very straightforward, epic orchestral hip hop. Now, what makes a hip hop cue epic? And it's in a couple of things. It is in the big brass, big orchestra sounds, and big percussion. And so for me, I've got these brass stabs just out of the gate, and this is kind of the melody, if you will. Now we can actually look at this. This is a couple of layered contact instruments, and I'm layering the contact instruments to give me a little bit more of a unique sound. We have the Symphobia, short strings or short brass, and then we have the chimbasso and bass from Cinebrass. Okay, and so put those together. Now, one of the things that I think you need to be careful about when you are writing kind of orchestral hip hop like this is that you don't necessarily want it to sound like you're bringing an orchestra to the gig. It really needs to sound more sampled. So why do I have contact instruments using VSTs? Because I'm also layering in a one shot that is from Splice. It's a Splice one-shot. And in this instance, I've loaded it into an Alchemy instance. And it sounds very sampley, very fake. Right? It doesn't sound like you can hear bump, bump, bump. It just sounds sampled, but you layer that on top of the brass, the orchestral sounds, and it adds that sample kind of shimmer to the quality. Very, very simple. You know, if we were to look at the notation there, we're in D minor, goes down to the 7, walks up the half step, kind of implying a 7-5-1 harmony. But you don't get really a fully realized A major chord. But that raised 7th scale degree, that is from the harmonic minor. Or melodic minor. Now, I'm also doubling up this brass with big piano stabs, and these pianos are just a grandeur patch set to concert hall. And this is something I love doing because hammering a piano with big brass just, I don't know, it just feels like there's a weight to it. And this is the piano by itself. It almost has like this is totally going to date me, but you know, I made a whole podcast episode about turning 50. It reminds me of People's Court. You remember that? Boom, 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 little bongo player going ham. All right, so that is most of our low end, except that I kind of created an 808 sound by blending a sine wave with a kick sound. So my sine wave is super low, and this is a trick that I use all the time that I unapologetically stole from Christian Henson, which is if you need low end, especially like on strings and brass and that kind of orchestral sounds, because it's really hard to coax 20, 30, 40, 50 hertz out of double bass or tuba or brass. So taking a sine wave and layering it underneath so it can really play those low frequencies. Here we're around 35, 40 hertz or so. It's really, really low. It's really there to be felt. And why am I using the sampler? Because in Logic, if you load up a sampler and do not have any sounds loaded, then you get a sine wave. So it's not even running an oscillator. It's just a sine wave, little kind of onboard sample. It is the lightest weight way that I've been able to find a sine wave. Now, granted, I'm not doing hardly anything with it, maybe some envelope shaping here, so it's not... it doesn't click when it starts and it doesn't ring out too much, but putting that underneath the brass and with I'll turn it off with the piano and brass. And now add it without. I mean, it's okay, but it just doesn't have now it has that beef to it. All right, so that's like the whole motif. Looking down to our drums, we have the bottle popping kit, which is a battery 4 kit. Of course, we're at 95 beats per minute. So there's no like trap hats or anything, and it's dead simple. And you're gonna see this theme pretty much throughout the entire day here, which is simple is almost always better. Simple is better, especially for sports cues, because there's a lot of things happening on top of it. I actually play this cue and play a placement of this cue in my lecture at Full Sail. And the clip has my music like this, all up in this, but on top of it, you have the sound effects from the graphics. Then you have possibly the audio from the clip that they're showing, if they're showing a highlight. And then you have the announcers' mics in the room and all the sound that the mics are picking up through the announcers. And then you have the voiceover. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we're fifth. Like if you're talking about our sound layers, and it's really, really at the bottom of the pile there. And so you just have to make it simple. Otherwise, it's just too busy. It's just too much. All right, so that is the bottle popping kit. No stock or no custom samples or anything, just stock battery. I am also layering it with a play instrument from East West, from the Ill Joints. I mean, it's just really simple. And then I have another kit, another battery kit with just some claps. This is the Electro 500 kit. A little bit of shaker. So all of my percussion sounds together. With the orchestral sub, which now we're starting to sound like an 808, plus the brass. Yeah, so throw in a little suspended cymbal, throw in a riser, and now we are ready for our initial A section. All right, a couple of other sounds that we are going to be adding to this A section is one is a guitar that I recorded. This is like a cheap $200 Ibanez. It is nothing special at all. If we listen to the left, and I put it up on the neck pickup, and the right is on the bridge pickup. So it's separate performances that I then panned, one hard pan left and one hard pan right. This is a very tried and true electric guitar technique. I'm running them all through the same guitar rig preset, which is Pete Won't Explain. I'm guessing that's kind of like a Who type sound. You could also change up different amps and pan them left and right. And the reason you want to do multiple takes, right, and not just copy and paste it, is you want the inconsistency of the guitar. So when it's panned, it sounds wide because they're not perfectly in time. And that's actually a feature and not an error. So this is just playing the basic root movement. Yep, 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 7 1. All right. After the first 4 bars, I bring in another layer, which is up higher. So this is the bridge pickup. Right, it's kind of closer to the saddle, and this is the neck pickup. Because on the Ibanez, it's basically Ibanez's version of a Gibson SG guitar, I believe it is. So it's a double humbucker. Sounds like I know what I'm talking about, doesn't it? So put those all together and you get this, starting off with just the low sound. And now add 4 bars later, the octave above. And I love this sound. I think this type of palm muted guitar thing works really, really well. I mean, if it's good enough for Eminem, then it's good enough for me. And the last thing I want to add here is the top line, which isn't necessarily the hook, because you don't need a really aggressive hook, because often that will just get in the way of dialogue. But, if I'm if I'm kind of borrowing from Eminem, then let's borrow who Eminem borrows from, and let's borrow some Dr. Dre. This is more grandeur. You're right. And so this is very, very much borrowed from, as far as the concept of kind of rippled right-hand piano notes. And it sounds a lot like Still Dre off of Snoop Dogg 2001 record, I believe it is. So put that with the low piano. Plus a guitar. You know what I'm just realizing for the first time? Stumbled out of bed and pour myself a cup of ambition. This almost sounds like 9 to 5. Boom, 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 boom. So Dolly Parton, am I borrowing from Dolly Parton? I guess I am as well. I did add an extra layer to the piano because, every 4 bars we want to be adding energy and building intensity up throughout. And so I am using boom whackers. And this is from a library called Box of Tricks from Sonic Couture. And boom whackers are those plastic tubes that you can hit. So same type of a thing, just different voicings. So if we look at both of these, then we are getting into where we make the complete chord. So if we start at the top, we bring our piano, we add our guitars, we add our low pianos, some low brass, sampled orchestral brass, add the boom whackers, add the sub bass, add the percussion. And we're going to cook on this for a while. And now we are going into what's essentially a breakdown. Now, in typical production music form, you would build up until around the halfway point, and then you would push into the breakdown, or I guess pull into the breakdown, because we're actually removing elements, and then build up energy. But this cue is by itself is about a minute 30. And so with hip hop, we don't always want to use that build, breakdown, build, but we can lean into some commercial hip-hop form as long as we do our layering right. And so here at around 30 seconds, I'm going to pull back the energy. I'm going to kill my brass stabs. I'm going to kill my piano and then bring in a bass pad. This is a silent patch. Now you might hear it pumping, and that's because I have it side chained to a kick. And that kick I call a ghost kick. And so this ghost kick exists solely up here. If you'll notice, if I solo this ghost kick, you don't hear anything, because its entire purpose, notice that this is set to no output, its entire purpose is to trigger the compressor of this pad. Now, we should be careful anytime you're using like sustained sounds around a bunch of rhythmic sounds. We have to be really careful because they can get really kind of away from you a little bit, where it's just too loud and it kind of overpowers everything. And so leading up into the breakdown, notice I also dropped the kicks. And because I dropped the kick, that's why I needed the ghost kick. I needed a kick sound that was just going to fire the compressor and sidechain the compressor so that I can pull the kick out here at the beginning of our breakdown and it doesn't lose the sidechain effect. Right, so it sounds a little bit more sustained. And where at the beginning we started with low guitar and then added up, here in the breakdown we started with high guitar and then added low. All right, and so now we're about to reintroduce the brass stabs. We bring a riser into it to push energy. We're not quite ready to bring in the high piano yet, but we're going to kill the boom whackers. We're going to reintroduce the brass, basically an A section. So we have intro. It's kind of intro-y, and then we level up, heighten the energy from there, and then we go into a breakdown. Add the low guitar layer, add the kick, and we're gonna go back to intro level, so just the brass, but without the high piano. Without the high guitar, only low guitar. And now add the high guitar, add the high piano. Little ear candy right here. Right, just a little, it's not really an edit point. It's just a little breath so that when I bring everything back in, it's going to hit a little bit harder. And this is something, this kind of ear candy arrangement technique that gets used all over hip hop, because this is where you would put a lyric, or you would put, maybe a sound effect or something kind of in that dead space. And then I just push everything. Everything goes all in, including my bass pad, because we essentially have A, B, we have an A, and then an A plus B. So whether it's a 2-minute cue or whether it's a minute 30, A, B, A plus B absolutely works. And then into the final chord, and this is where I have some sustained brass, because you don't want to necessarily end on a really, really short note. And this is something that I've learned along the way. You want to give them a nice big full button so they can go to commercial and come back. And then it fades out. Yeah, it's just a minute and 30, and it seems to work across multiple sports. So what's the real takeaway? And I'm gonna talk about the mix here in just a second, but I think the real takeaway here is keep it simple, keep it super simple. You don't have to keep just adding new sounds and new sounds and new sounds. What can you do by adding, octaves to the sounds that you already have? And if you've run out of new sounds to add, what would happen if you just pull the energy back? I mean, we have to be careful, like tension cues, ABA, that form works really, really great. Contemporary hip hop cues arguably need to lean even closer to contemporary hip hop or commercial hip hop form, which is much more verse, chorus relationship, whereas big epic orchestral for sports, we really can't dip down the energy too much. And this is something that's really, really important. You'll notice that this cue starts pretty hard. And the reason it does is because so many times sports broadcasting cues are what we call needle drops, meaning they just play it and then they run the graphic, or they run the highlight or something over it. Because these often get pulled in live. They have to instantly work. You can't have this really long, drawn-out intro. Editors, I have found, don't really like that. But we also can't dip the energy way, way down. Sports broadcasting cues also tend to not have really exaggerated edit points like you would find in a trailer cue or something. And so yeah, I'm really, really proud of this. I really, really like it. It's done really, really well. So I'm happy about that. But let's just briefly check out the mix. It's very, very straightforward, very, very simple mix. Obviously, there's no EQ on the ghost kick. But if we start with the orchestral sub is really the only sound getting the very, very low end. And then everything else has to kind of get out of its way. And back that up just a little bit. So you'll see I will put low cuts across so many of these sounds to get them well out of the way, because I'm not counting on the brass or the brass sample or even the piano to really carry the low end. So where the orchestral sub here, and I call it orchestral sub because it's just a sine wave, but if we look at these together, kind of about where, let me put them kind of right on top of each other. You see where this kind of is curving down? That's about where I will pull up my high pass. High pass. High pass, low cut makes my brain itch somewhat. So it's a lot about getting things out of the way, including, the kicks. You can see how I have removed a lot of the low ends. Let's start that over. And here is what the you can hear how that kind of sounds like an 808. And then the other EQs are somewhat salt to taste, making sure that we're not over crushing the highs. Obviously, we have a compressor who is just really, really pumping hard, but that is the sidechain. And look at the lack of effects. Just look at the dearth of effects. We've got a little bit of sample delay on the boom whackers. Let me isolate those. And the boom whackers, this is a stereo widening trick I do all the time. Let me turn that off. They sound fine. They're kind of coming right down the middle. But if I delay the left side by 10 milliseconds, and it sounds a lot wider. Compare that to the piano. Right, they're kind of playing the same thing. So let me turn off. Right, so that's the boom whackers without the stereo. And I feel like they're right on top of each other. But as soon as I engage this left side 10 millisecond delay, it gets out of the way. And I use this trick religiously. This is one of my favorite production hacks to create width. And it's also a fantastic way of distributing across the stereo field sounds that are like right on top of each other, playing very similar things in very, very similar ranges. And so it's a little bit of kind of mid-side trickery. I do this also with hi-hats. Like I'll pull in a couple of like splice hi-hat loops, chop them up a little bit, and then I will widen one of them so that they can kind of exist in the same space. The pad also has a sample delay. In this case, it's 20 milliseconds to the left. I can put it 20 milliseconds to the right. Just to widen that out. All right, a little bit of sidechain compression, and then we get into this suspended cymbal. I'm just going through my my effects here. And this is just an exciter. This is a sample that I recorded. I recorded it in mono. This is before I had my stereo mics, and here's what it sounds like without any effects. So add a little channel EQ, add the sample delay so it's nice and wide. Sounds almost like a stereo mic. And then add some frequency exciter, just to shimmer it up just a little bit. And I think that's pretty much all the effects. That's it. EQs, some reverbs that I'm using here. This is a QL spaces or quantum leap spaces or east-west. This does not have spaces 2 because I actually wrote this before I got heavily into spaces 2 and before my spaces template. We do have some side chaining that we are doing. So anytime you see these 2 kits, they are bust, and I am sending 100% unity signal over to the one knob pressure. And one knob pressure is one of the few remaining Waves plugins I use. And, I've talked about my relationship with Waves over the years, but I like it because it's just a really simple parallel compression. It's just a very simple one knob compressor. And so without, let me actually turn it off, and I'll mute the parallel compression. I mean, that's okay, but with the parallel compression, let me turn it off. With it, and let me play it in context without the parallel compression. With it. Yep. Yeah, it just helps it bite a little bit more. And I was experimenting with the pumper, but I don't think I'm sending anything to it. This is in lieu of the Ghost Kick, and so I'm not using that, mainly because this plugin, like many of the other kind of sidechain plugins, aren't actual compression plugins as much as they are volume attenuation, right? They're just gain plugins, and it's just modulating where it's, the gain is rising and falling. But real sidechain compression works using a compressor, and that sounds better through a compressor because as the compression kicks in, it kind of squashes the top peaks, squashes them first, and then pushes everything out of the way. And then when it releases in the opposite. So you get a much more kind of, the sound is growing. It's not just getting louder. The sound is getting bigger as the volume comes back, if that makes any sense. All right, this was written before I had Ozone 9 or 10 or 11, so this is Ozone 8. Very simple mastering chain. I have my EQ. I put some dynamics across all of the frequencies. Just trim a little bit off the top of each of these. Very, very simple ratio, very simple attack and release. Some frequency excitation. Some imaging, pushing the mids up, but bringing the highs down a little bit and bringing the low end a little bit. This can sometimes, all that stereo widening trickery that we were doing with the sample delay, that can sometimes create some unintended stereo width issues. But I would say as long as your phase in general is kind of hugging the 1 a little bit more and not dipping into the -1 in our phase correlation, we're going to be in pretty good shape. I always do a post EQ on my mastering chain here in Ozone, and it is a mid-side EQ. And what that means is that I am going to EQ in the mids. I'm going to scoop out this area kind of in the low mids, or in this case, I'm sorry, I think that would be the high mids. So scoop that out for dialogue, and in the sides, I exaggerate that and really cut off the low end. So there's like next to no low end actually going into the sides. And so here's the mids. And here are the sides. So you put those together. All right, so without the post EQ and with it, without, with, yeah, I mean, it's subtle. It should be subtle. It's a mastering, EQ, and so it should be subtle. The loudness is pumping pretty loud, getting up into the 9s and 10 LUFs, -9 and -10s, and this is because it's sports, and the sports guys love their loud cues. Here it is without the mastering chain. We'll start that over. Without the mastering chain, sounds like this. With the mastering chain. Without. And with. So, very simple, and I use this same mastering technique across all of my cues, whether they're dramedy cues, hip-hop cues, orchestral cues, trailer cues. I will use this same mastering technique. And I also will use some of the like Ozone's Mastering Assistant or even Logic's new mastering plugin, which is really, really, really good. So, what do you think? Any questions? If you have any questions, please let me know. Let me know in the comments below. But I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed seeing that. The moral of the story is keep it simple because it has to stay out of the way of dialogue. If it's too busy, then it can absolutely just run roughshod over everything, and the library or the editors, they just won't use it. So I'm looking to do more of these things in the future, and if you have a type of cue you would like to see a deep dive cue breakdown, please let me know in the comments below. I do read all of these comments, and if you enjoyed that and you're like, wow, I really got a lot out of this, I do cue breakdowns just like this every single week for the family and friends subscribers of 52 Cues, and would love to have you. So if you want to know about how you can join us, then why don't you take a listen to Alternate Universe Dave tell you about how you can join. But when we come back, we're going to check out a trailer cue, an uplifting trailer cue that took me 4 weeks to write. We'll be right back. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel, would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbors subscribers of 52 Cues, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly cue breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52 Cues. You can just go to 52cues.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or if maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers? Then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52cues.com. That was Only Ever Onward, which is an uplifting trailer cue. And if that sounds familiar, it's because a couple of weeks ago on the episode where we talked about using Save the Cat and narrative story structure to help structure our trailers, this was the cue that was in progress. Now, I said that it took 4 weeks, but I want to clarify, it didn't take, 4 8 hours a day, weeks. This was done during our music production live stream that I do every single week, usually either Friday mornings or Wednesday afternoons. It's probably going to start being on Friday mornings for you UK folks or anybody that the miracle morning people like me. Anyway, so over the last month, we have been writing it in 2-hour chunks. And I got to admit, after week 3, I was kind of stuck. Like it wasn't coming together. My act 3 really wasn't happening. And so I had to go back and do some more reference work. And I had to remind myself to keep it simple. Now, if you want to see a complete breakdown of this cue, including the instruments I used and the thought process and how everything was put together, including the mix and even the title, then you can check out this cue breakdown. It is available right now for family and friends subscribers. And for you family, friends, and neighbor subscribers, you can see this cue get written in real time because I have all 4 episodes of this live stream in our archives just for you subscribers. So I hope you enjoyed that. And thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me on whatever day of the week it is for you. I really appreciate you giving me some time today, but that is going to do it for me this week. And again, a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and neighbors, subscribers, and thank you. Whether you're a subscriber or not, while I would appreciate, a thumbs up and all the YouTube stuff, and follow me on Instagram at 52Qs and give me a review on the podcast app. That's all really, really great. But even if you never do that, I'm here to tell you, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you definitely want to tune in next week, where I'm going to be joined by one of my dearest and oldest friends who you have probably heard of, especially if you're a gamer, if you play games like Tomb Raider or Order 1886 or Moss, or if you've played any of the Dead Space games, you have heard the music of Jason Graves. And Jason's going to be joining me next week. We're going to be talking about the game music industry, what the state of it is, and how can we get into game music, because Jason, much like myself, used to write production and library music, and he transitioned from library music into games. And so that might be you. You might be thinking, how can I get into the game industry? Well, you don't want to miss my interview next week with Jason Graves. And I have a fantastic announcement. Jason is going to be joining us for the family and friends subscribers for a Q&A and cue breakdown session on September 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern. It is sure to be a packed house. And so if you want to have your cue reviewed by Mr. Jason Graves himself, then you can head out and you can RSVP to that. We would love to hear from you. But I hope you've had a fantastic week. Thanks again for joining me. And I know you're going to have an amazing week next week. How do I know that? Because I trust and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2024 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber of 52 Qs, head over to 52qs.com.